Hi, I hope you're doing well. It's just a very quick live. Just wait for the numbers to go up a little bit. It's the 25th of May 2026. I'm Gary Waterman, a former UK Police Constable. Yeah, the signal popped out for a second there. Whatever reason, the signal went for a minute, but it's back now. Just wait for the numbers to go up a little bit. It's only showing 7 people on there now. Just a very quick update, really, in relation to what I'm now looking at. It's looking as though they were hoping to use Apophis, which is an asteroid that they were claiming at one point might hit the Earth in 2029. Now they're claiming it's not going to hit the Earth, as a potential connection to a falsified 7-year tribulation period beginning this year. And this research was prompted by a TikTok feed that popped up on my TikTok, talking about 7-year tribulation period beginning potentially next month, June. And if you don't know what the tribulation period is, then it's in relation to scripture. It talks about 7-year tribulation where you have 3.5 years of peace, relative peace on earth, and then 7 years of absolute catastrophe, leading to the end of the 7 years with the return of Christ. So now this is interesting because I'd known that there was this potential link into the falsified 7-year tribulation in all of this, but what I'm now finding is the Apophis connection, which is the asteroid, as I said, that they claimed came very close to Earth in 2004. The timing of that ties into a lot of the research that I've done around the earthquake side of things as well, and 2004 is obviously the 50th anniversary that CERN was created. So this is all now tying in with this, and I've now found a connection via Apophis, via the research on the Company's House records of those that those that supposedly identified that asteroid in 2004. Sorry, linking back into the Pizzagate scandal, but very importantly, making connections to the Podestas linked to the Pizzagate scandal and the former CEO for the Podestas family called Catherine Fitz. Now, it looks as though Catherine Fitz is using 2 identities, and that connects into an article that was publicised in May last year about $21 trillion having been funneled into an underground doomsday city for the rich and famous. Now, they publicised this as I was releasing my evidence in relation to a falsified apocalyptic agenda in relation to what they're doing, including how that tied in with the doomsday clock, and including how that tied in with me releasing that evidence of a deception and an asteroid potentially being used to hit the Earth, or a false asteroid hitting the Earth in 2032 to tie in with a 7-year tribulation period beginning last year. Well, now I've found connections to Apophis. Sorry, I've got something in my eye. Keep getting loads of flies in my eye at the moment. Trouble is, you can never save the flies when they go in your eye. They tend to die, don't they? Which is a bit annoying. Anyway, I've now tied Apophis into that apocalyptic deception, tying in with the underground city and $21 trillion that they've confirmed, through the articles that they've stolen from humanity through this fraud. And of course, it will be through the Company's House fraud. So now what this tells us is this is now starting to build the evidence and support what I was talking about in my live last night, and how the Zion connection to the Matrix movies appears to be an inverted control mechanism deception, all right, in relation to false apocalyptic events. And what I mean by that is, the way that they can try to get people to maintain the secrecy of the criminal system, even with the evidence of the crimes against the children happening and being exposed, is to say that there's going to be a false apocalyptic natural event and promise salvation to certain individuals and their families, i.e. in an underground doomsday tunnel system, etc., in the event of a false apocalyptic event. This then ties into, of course, the secular 13 end of Mayan calendar, end of the world events, because what's possible is what's possibly happened previously, and a lot of people will say this is the case, that the system, the criminal system, has been exposed several times previously. When it gets exposed to a certain point, they basically wipe out most of humanity and just remain those behind the criminal system remain alive, and then they then come back out and they end up just starting all over again. Now this is now starting to produce the evidence confirming that this is what they have potentially been doing, or in terms of what I said earlier, using a fake apocalypse event, okay, to control those that don't want to be part of the crimes against the children, okay, all right, and would actually normally speak out about what they're part of because of the blood of the children and the crimes against the children, and then use that deception to maintain this control. Now, you know, there's now a lot of evidence I'm finding in relation to this over the last sort of 18 hours or so, and you got to think, so 7-year tribulation, let's just say this is what they're planning starting in June. This is what I've seen information of, which my evidence is now starting to support this at the moment, and how that ties in with Apophis, as I've said, an asteroid, or they were hoping it was going to potentially tie in with Apophis. Now that would take you 3.5 years, will obviously take you to the end of 2030. That's right, isn't it? 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, yeah, the end of 2030. Now we already know that the governments, this is the international governments, okay, which are all tied in with the blood of the children, all of this international government fraud, have a huge thing about the 2030 agenda. Okay, now we've known that, haven't we, how they're trying to tie that in with climate change, etc. So this now fits in with the 3.5 year period of the end of peace leading into the falsified tribulation. Now the other thing that is now starting to support this, and this is thanks to somebody else, I didn't know about this, is that in July this year, the Large Hadron Collider is shutting down, according to CERN's website. I've had a look and confirmed it, until 2030. So this now suggests what they're going to be doing is trying to increase the ability to create a false tribulation event using the Collider technology, tying that in with 2030, which is obviously the end of the 3.5 year peace period, going into the 3.5 years of catastrophe on Earth, which includes, according to the scripture, earthquakes, tsunamis, etc. So you can now see how this is starting to tie in with what their potential plans were. I think it's all going to be foiled, to be honest with you. I don't think they're going to succeed, because the evidence is, and the exposure is in advance of their plans. I think now it's all starting to accumulate so much that I think it's going to go wrong for them. And I believe this is the last time that the secular period of destruction and rebirth of the earth, if you like, is going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen this time, personally. All of the signs are there that it's now, we're talking about a change forever leading forward on Earth, if it's true with what they've done, where they have collapsed the system, destroyed most of humanity, and then rebuilt it under their own control again. And let's just say they have done that several times. I don't think that's going to happen this time. All right, I think the evidence is just so strong. The strategy is key to this. More people are starting to wake up. I think the tunnel system will collapse, and I think they're all going to drown if this is what this is what they're going to try. I think it's going to fail for them. I really do. So the other thing I'm looking into, so you've got this Apophis connection. So far I've found connections from the 2 people that actually identified the Apophis asteroid, going straight back into the criminal network, and the same companies tying in with the Church of Satan links into the into the, what's it called? Church of Satan, into the Pizzagate scandal, tying into all of the same companies. Let me just come off for a second here. Sorry about that. There was something else I was going to say about this. Now, you've also got in July this year, there's something significant, it seems, going on with the Vatican to do with the St. X, which I think is going to tie in with the bloodline of Christ element in all of this. There's something going on in July. And of course, the other thing that fits this is what we're seeing with Donald Trump at the moment, who is 100% part of the deception, everybody, 100%. He's linking in with the Church of Satan. He's massively linked into the criminal network. He's linked to Jimmy Savile. He's linked to the royal family members. He's linked to the CERN collider technology, the falsified prophecies, into Madeleine McCann, 100%. What I was going to say is, obviously, we're now seeing that he's supposedly securing a fake peace deal with Israel at the moment. That's all going through. So this is starting to, it seems, form the falsified 3.5-year peace situation on Earth that I'm talking about, ending at the end of 2030, leading into the apocalypse deception of 2030. Now, that would take us, of course, into 2033. If this is what they're planning, it would effectively mean that the second coming of Christ would occur in 2033. Now, that's 33 years after 2,000 years after the supposed birth, I believe, of Christ. Well, Christ was 33 years old when he was crucified, according to the information, right? And now we've got this information saying 2033, potentially the second coming at the end of the tribulation period. But I believe, I think what's happened is I think there's been a satanic infiltration of Scripture, certainly with all Abrahamic faith groups, including Christianity, an inversion. And I think what's happened is they've written something down, okay, potentially the tribulation situation and the earthquakes and tsunamis, as satanic infiltration of that Scripture, and now it's all falling apart for them. And obviously you've got all this evidence coming out, potentially, you know, we've all been double crossed, and that Jesus actually had a baby, and that the bloodline exists here on Earth. Well, that changes dramatically a lot of things, of course. It doesn't of course change the moral foundation behind Christianity of loving thy neighbour, and the fact that there's, or the belief that there's potentially a creator linked to Christ. And somebody's actually sent me some voice notes today saying that that Christ was potentially a whistleblower that was sent to Earth to try and stop everything, which is what I'm doing now, and to prevent the apparent crimes against the children right back then, potentially. Yeah, where there was a lot of other stuff I found in the last few hours, but that's it for now. I'm not going to stay on it for too long. So that's what I'm working on now, is the falsified 7-year tribulation event that it looks like they're leading into potentially this year, potentially. So yeah, that's it. There's loads of other stuff. It's gone out of my mind. I'm just going to have a quick look through the comments, and then I'm going to head off and carry on with what I'm doing. Someone's put Jesus Christ is the false Messiah. Gary, was you a follower of Yeshua HaMashiach before the police force? No, I was never really. I always knew there was, or thought there was, a creator. I remember when I was a child, my nan and granddad were getting older, and I remember saying to my mum, why aren't they going to church? You know, why aren't they following some sort of faith if their time is nearly up? So I've always known that there was something there. I'm the only one in my family that appears to be, unless they all really are religious and they're part of the deception and knowing who I am, and they've had to portray this image of not believing in a creator. I'm the only one in my family that actually is even, you know, slightly, shall we say, spiritual or religious, if you want to call it religious. But no, it's only really when I started to interact with some friends that were part of churches, and then my wife's, I don't think it was actually my wife's grandfather, I think that was a lie, but for 17 years I was led to believe that Barry was my wife's grandfather, which is where I got this ring. And it was only when we really started spending time with him that I started to sort of really focus a bit more, if you like, on faith. And then I started to find changes in myself at that point. And of course, as the evidence evolved around the connections into Christianity and the falsified prophecies, I now don't think I can provide a name for my belief. I don't believe I can even provide a name for what I believe in the creator, because I think the deception is just so massive. Of course, they've controlled all of the information, they've controlled all of the books, they've controlled all of the publications. So how can I give a true name as to what that creator is in my mind based on a name they've given it? You can't, because they're all linked in with the satanic cults, they're all linked in with the deception against all of humanity, which goes completely against whatever the name of that creator is, because we know that because of moral conscience. It's ingrained within the humanity's DNA, providing we keep a rational state of mind, which has been removed, as I keep saying, through the system. Hope that sort of answers your question. Jimmy Savile, Row Crew, carry on. Rolf Harris, I sat on his knee at Pebble Mill Studios in Green Lane Primary School. Jimmy Savile, Row Crew, carry on. Rolf Harris. I'm just looking back at the comments. I'm just going from the bottom, looking up at the older comments just for a minute before I go. Garrett, did you look up CERN backwards? Yeah, I've started looking into it, but I haven't gone into it enough yet. I've got to prioritize what I'm looking at, and if they're trying to create a false tribulation event now, I really need to focus on that as the threat, because if I can expose that as part of this, then you know, that's got to be the priority. But I did start looking at it, yes, thank you. I haven't documented anything about it yet. You alerted me about the benefits. £1,000. They claim £12,000 from my national insurance number. Someone's put the creator's name is Gary, if you have time to check out Tim Cohen's, yeah, I will try and do that. I've got to try and obviously prioritize information I think needs to be researched first of all, and this seems to be very important at the moment. Just looking through the comments. Captive. Christ the Messiah came to set the captive free. Paul came to tell slaves, obey your masters. From an ex-criminal to an ex-cop, you're aware that the globe is artificial and a lie. Well, that's what a lot of people say. I'm not too sure that's the case, but you know, I've got to be very evidence-based, and how I tie it into the Companies House records. I'm not saying that's not true. I suspect that is a capture psyop to try and discredit people trying to prove the truth. I suspect. You know, you look at the moon, it's round. You look at the sun, it's round. You look at there's a lot of other evidence in relation to what I'm establishing with the sphere connections. Based on everything I've got at the moment, I suspect it was a capture technique. You know, you've got this ice wall theory that, you know, it's the ice wall keeps us all in. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't fit the common sense, if you like, and the moral conscience common sense given to us by the creator. I think the ice wall side of things is probably it's been misinformed, and it's probably to do with the technology that they have at Antarctica, or the information they're providing, which could be a deception of the technology that they have in relation to Antarctica, and how that ties in with the falsified properties that I'm exposing. You know, you've got the ice cube neutrino device supposedly there. Could be a massive deception in relation to this. Someone's put, maybe buy some sunglasses to prevent flies in the eyes, and it will also protect you from facial recognition scans. Thanks very much. Yep, not a bad idea at all. Thank you very much. Lovely to see you. Thanks, True Finder. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's nice being outside. It is nice being outside. Hi everyone. Hope you're doing okay. Thanks for all your comments. Right, I've gone back to the beginning. So I'm going to leave it at that for that. It's just a very quick live stream, just to confirm now I'm looking into the falsified 7-year tribulation event that it seems potentially they're trying to lead into from this year, and how that links in with Apophis, the asteroid that they claimed may have hit Earth. They're now claiming it isn't going to hit Earth, but the connections I've found to it are very important, and it looks as though they're setting up a future potential event for it to hit Earth in future. So this is obviously, with them, what they're doing is they are changing things and their strategy and their agenda as the exposure continues. So they're in a very look, we've got to understand, they are in a very tricky predicament now with this evidence. Whichever way you look at this, it is not going well for them. Okay, it is not going to how they planned. I don't believe, you know, you're getting people that are getting photographs taken of them that I don't think they planned going into the document. You're getting you can see the movements taking place. You know, these people within Companies House, these people are not invincible. Okay, they are not perfect. They are completely the opposite. In fact, this is what you've got to remember. They do not appear to have the creator on their side through the moral conscience that was given to them. They've gone completely against that, which actually makes them vulnerable. Okay, now they may well get rid of me. I may well not survive this. At least I've done what's right all the way through this, and everything I've done has been based on evidence, and I know whatever happens to me, I'm going to be okay, I believe, in the long run. These people are not as capable as many of you believe they are, because of the fact they've gone against what they know to be right. Okay, they are extremely vulnerable now. I feel very, very sorry for them. They've given up the most valuable thing possible, okay, the moral conscience, and therefore they've given up on the creator. Okay, they've completely given up on the creator because of what they're doing and what they're part of. I'm just going to look back on the see if there's any in the comments. Are you on TikTok as well? If you're talking to me, yes, I am. It's Gary for Freedom. Gary for Freedom on TikTok. They're massively restricting all of my content. I actually saw when I went on my TikTok yesterday, the numbers of people, so you can see how many people have viewed the video from the summary. The numbers were going down on who's actually viewed those videos. It's just unreal. So we know they're trying to control the information, but interestingly, they're not shutting me down completely, all right, which suggests there's people within the system that are potentially supporting me that might know who I am. They're not removing my latest YouTube. They're not removing my latest TikTok, even though there's a lot of evidence in there. Well, they took my whole YouTube channel down the other day, but then it was reinstated. So, and that was after a phone call was made to the police, really putting them into a corner. And they've now provided a crime reference number, which now gives me an in with all of the evidence, you see, because that now opens up the door for me to get that evidence to them, proving absolutely everything I'm saying. Now that, in theory, should blow the entire world system wide open. There's stuff on the news all of the time that's coming out. I've just had a look, and what's his name, who's on the headlines today, he's gone out of my mind. He was not Angela Merkel's partner, Nicola Sturgeon's ex-husband. So I've had a quick look on the Companies House records. He's supposedly being prosecuted for £400,000 of embezzlement through the SNP organisation. Straight away on Companies House, he links into everything I'm talking about straight away. So this is, it seems, where they are cornered to such an extent they're having to expose certain elements of it, but they're not obviously exposing the full truth in this. They're not mentioning the actual Companies House fraud, and what they're having to do is make it appear to you that they are doing something about some elements of the fraud, but they're not. They're not resolving this. Nobody's actually doing the right thing, because to do that, they're all going to be exposed. They know that. And it changes the course of the future, you see, through that exposure. It messes up the whole apocalyptic falsified prophecy deception they may have. You know, it changes any plans and foils all of their plans moving forward, and changes the world forever, you see, and they know that. So, you know, it's critical times for everybody. Put a comment above this addressed to me, but it's for you. Justin, put a comment above this address for me. End of the day, this world, Jim will fix it, but we are not of this world, someone's put. I don't believe in aliens or anything like that. Well, let me put it this way. They want you to believe in aliens, so that means you can't trust them, because that's going to be part of their agenda. And anyone that's trying to fit that, okay, is probably part of their agenda and working on behalf of them. All right, it's not very obvious they were hoping to use a fake alien element in this, tying in with the 3i Atlas comet of 2025, when that was discovered in July of the exact same month that the world currency producer, the LaRue, came off the London Stock Exchange for the first time since 1947, which is when the Doomsday Clock began, and that connects to Ghislaine Maxwell. There's loads of other stuff happened in that, around that month, massive signs that tells you that it's part of a deception. So they want you to believe that there are aliens because that gives them a potential out. Okay, that gives them a potential, look, it was the aliens that did this, or look what the aliens have done to humanity, they've wiped out most of humanity, it wasn't us, it was the aliens. You know, this is the sort of thing that you're talking about with the asteroid deception element. What that gives them the ability to potentially do is say it was an asteroid, right? They all go and hide potentially in their underground bunkers, say it was an asteroid, but actually it was a load of, if nuclear weapons are real, let's just presume they are for now, and fire a load of nuclear weapons in one location, all right, to end the life of most of the people on the surface whilst they're underneath, and then they come out. And this ties in with the information that was being fed to me about the end of the world, tying in with the fraud, and then potentially firing loads of nuclear weapons in one location. This was actually being fed to me in 2024 at the same time that Donald Trump was coming out saying the world may end as a result of nuclear war with Iran. Well, I know they're all working collaboratively together. I mean, it's actually laughable. The amount of times over the last few days I've looked at something on the news and just had to laugh at how pathetic what they're doing is and how blatantly obvious it now becomes because of the international government fraud evidence now being exposed. It's very, very obvious that they're still continuously lying on the news. You're all being, not all of you, but much of the world is being deceived by that news to fit their agenda moving forward. And I can't help myself. Sometimes I just laugh because it's so blatantly obvious. And this just shows how I'm going to try and be polite to them, how broken they are because they're not on the side of the creator, and how therefore incompetent they are becoming. And I don't mean this in an insulting way, but how failable and incompetent they are because they have come so far away from the creator. Now that's, someone said, well, Gary, they can get you if they want to, and yet they may well do. And I think it's possibly right when they're using the drones, etc. And I may not survive this, all right? I'm very open to that realization that I might not come out the other side of this. But that doesn't mean that they are indestructible and that they're invincible and that they can't be beaten in this. I absolutely 100% believe they can, 100%. Otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. I 100% believe this can all be stopped. Otherwise I wouldn't be carrying on doing what I'm doing, would I, if I didn't have that hope that that was going to be the case. Artemis, April Fool to the moon, wake up sheeple. Yeah, I don't believe that happened at all. I don't believe they've ever been on the moon. And again, this supports the deception potentially around their technology. Okay, a lot of people are saying, yeah, they have all of it, and they may do. Don't get me wrong, they may have technology far beyond what we're being led to believe, possibly. But if they're not actually able to go to the moon, which the evidence is pretty overwhelmingly haven't been, and they're lying to us about that, then of course that creates the question of, well, if they haven't been able to achieve getting away from Earth, then that means potentially their other technology may also be part of the deception, you see. So just something to consider in all of this. I'm going to head off because I need to carry on, and I'll try and do a live in the next couple of days, possibly tomorrow. I just want to get this evidence done, get the document out. Those of you who haven't already seen the previous publication that was on the 20th of May, you can go on to my Telegram channel, which is Gary for Freedom. Again, the word for, not the number, Gary for Freedom on Telegram, and you'll be able to get the publication of that document from the main page. Okay, you can download that. You should be able to, I hope anyway. Although it's a compromised platform, it's still there. Hopefully you can go on there, Gary for Freedom, get that document, download it. You can then search that document. There's a lot of spelling mistakes in it. I've done my best. That's all I can do. Everything's on my phone, so it could be a lot better. And you can do with that information what you want. If you want to put it into a format, a better format, or you want to create a diagram showing connections or whatever to help, then by all means you can do that. But yeah, please go and get that document. The latest document I'm hoping to publicise as soon as I can, and I will put it on my Telegram again as well, and I will also be sending that out on emails as well, because the trouble is with the Telegram side of things, it's possible that they corrupt the link to that document from that possible. I know they've been doing that 100% with document file links that I was trying to use, so we can only consider that because there's a third party element involved that's part of the fraud. Are they going to manipulate that document when you get it from Telegram? Potentially. I think it's a lot harder for them to do that if you're getting an email, a direct email from me, and that document is attached to it, and you're literally getting that document, although you've got the third party email company. I think it will be difficult for them to compromise that document, but I could be wrong. It could be that they're able to also do that through the emails as well, but I think it'll be possibly a bit harder, possibly. Every faith you will be okay. Thanks very much, Lisa. Yeah, I think I might, it is what it is. I think hopefully I'll be okay. Oh well, if he reads it one day, hopefully he will see how critical it is. Sorry, I haven't seen your comment, Justine, yet. I haven't picked up on every comment so far. I'm just going to can I actually just select yours and just see your messages? No, I can't. Well, I'm just scrolling up, Justine, to see if I can see your comment. And obviously, there's a lot of other people wanting to comment as well. And just don't stay long. And no, I don't believe the alien deception at all. I'm sorry, anyone that's saying that. I've got too much evidence to say that's part of the deception. I'm just going to disregard any of that at the moment because the evidence is so strong that it's part of their lies. You've got people that I know are massively part of the fraud and the blood of the children, linking in with the Vatican, that have been trying to get me to believe the exact same thing. So therefore, you can't believe it. I'm not saying I don't believe it's possible that there may be other life forms out there, but because of people are trying specifically to get me to believe that, and I know they're at the heart of all of this, such as David Icke, massively part of the deception, massively linked to the international drug trafficking network, very quickly into the intelligence agencies, talking about the shapeshifters and lizards and all of that stuff. And because they're linked into the drugs network, you've got to remember that people's minds, I'm not saying David Icke's on drugs, but people's minds don't have that clarity and rationality. So it's possible they actually believe there are aliens because they're seeing things, because their mind's being affected against the creator because of the substance abuse. That's potentially an element. It might be people have seen what they believe were lizards, but they're under the influence of drugs or control through this criminal system. So therefore, it's compromised. It's compromised. It's very important that we have the clarity of the creator, the rationality, and the moral conscience to understand the truth in all of this. I'm just still looking back. Justine put a comment here. All I want to say is, where is the evidence that we live on a spinning ball? There's plenty of evidence to the contrary, and I've seen in favour of the globe. I give up. I have tried multiple times to show him this. Okay, you're obviously getting frustrated. I haven't seen it, Justine. It's possible they're removing the comment. Have you thought about that? I can't see it so far. I'm looking back on the comments. They cannot touch a hair on your head. If they do, must prove. Well, they assaulted me in prison, and it was an assault, so it didn't hurt me, but username Justine has asked you something. She's a regular, by the way. I still haven't seen it, Justine. What's that saying? Nah, thinks it is so critical he reads what I am saying. I still haven't seen it. They're possibly removing it. All right, John D. Omphalos on the Isle of Dogs. He is the original 007. He created the British Empire using a ritual. I presume that's what you're talking about. Yeah, thank you. I've screenshot that. I'll have a look. I've actually done some research around 007. It links into the Bond family as well. James Bond name ties into the Bond family, which is linked to Twynham Village on the Purbeck coast in Dorset, which I've been to many, many times. So that's now tying into this as well. And interestingly, the 007, the first time it was referenced in the movies, according to the research that I've recently done, was during Casino Royale in 2006. Okay, now the original book was Casino Royale. Okay, the movie came out in 2006. That's the year that I moved from Kent to Dorset. That's the year that Apocalypso was released. That's the year that the Da Vinci Code movie was released in relation to the deception of Christ with Christ and the bloodline. That's the year that The Devil Wears Prada was released, which links to the Church of Satan, and Casino Royale was released in 2006. And that was the first movie to, according to the research, make a reference to 007. Well, what was the next year? 2007. 007. Now, the only other time you would have had that is 1007, which would have been obviously 1,000 years earlier. Okay, it's the only time you would have, as far as, yeah, my brain's, yeah, the only time you would have 007 within a year. Well, that was the year that Madeleine McCann went missing, that I was introduced to Exbourne Manor, that I was introduced to my wife, all staged, and when Exbourne Manor Freehold Limited was incorporated on the Company's House records, where my investigation became. Now, I don't believe that's all going to be a coincidence. All right, tying in with that. So, yeah, very, very interesting. But I will do some, thank you very much for that research. I will have a little look at that and see what I can find. Why aren't you responding to me, Mark? Oh, that's somebody else. Gary, you are the author of your destiny. You are the authority. The universe is inside you. You are the universe. You are the creator of your universe. Gary, please look at my comment. Hopefully I've seen it now, Justine, but I'm going back at previous comments in case you put something else. Antarctic Treaty is the only thing the whole world can agree upon, though, plus Nikon P1000. I've researched the Antarctic Treaty. It's all in my document. It's all part of the deception and part of the fraud. Linking back to me. Gary, have you watched the documentaries? The Arrival series explains all of this from its historical points. No, I haven't. Thank you. I've got to be very mindful of the information being given to me as part of a distraction and deception. If it can't be tied into the Company's House fraud that joins all of the dots, that's what is key to all of this. If I can't do that, then I have to consider that a lot of the evidence that's maybe being fed to me could be a deception. I thank you for answering my questions, and you are doing the creator's work. Thanks, Mark. Alchemy, the Philosopher's Stone, is critical to understanding occultism current satanic state. Thanks, Justine. Yeah, I've seen actually alchemy companies in the research. I haven't really focused on them a lot, but we know now that the alchemy and the black magic element of this ties into it, but it also ties into the drug trafficking network, which means they're not thinking rationally again. You've got to keep coming back to, there's all this talk of magic and demons and lizards and shapeshifters, but if their minds aren't clear through the creator because of the substance abuse, then of course a lot of that could be part of the imagination, if you like, or the illusion in their minds. Now, a great example of this is Aleister Crowley, as I've mentioned over the last few lives, clearly hugely connected to this, connects to Inverness, connects to the Flemings, connects to Exbourne Manor almost immediately, Osmsley Manor, which links to the Cray twins, which is in the New Forest, which links to the Profumo affair, which links to the Russian government and to the American government. Now, he was a heroin addict, okay, talking about Aleister Crowley. He was a heroin addict. So, you know, and he was massively, according to the information, involved in black magic and sex magic and all of this stuff. But because of, as I've said, the drug connection, we have to consider that actually, you know, they're claiming all of this, but it could be part of the imagination of it as well. Hi, Gary. Hi, everyone. Always good to know you are safe and well, Gary. Thank you. Your evidence. Thank you so much, Vivian. Very much appreciate it. All your nice comments really do mean a lot to me. Thank you so much. The Amphalos is the occult spiritual centre of the British Empire on the Isle of Dogs. Thanks very much, Justine. I'm screenshotting some of your comments. I can look at it. Gary, I believe Christ has chosen you for such specific reasons. You are doing the Creator's will. Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate it. It certainly feels like that. I just hope I'm not doing the wrong thing and actually I'm stopping or trying to stop something that is supposed to happen. I don't think that's the case. It doesn't make sense to me that the Creator, which is given moral conscience, would actually create catastrophe on Earth against those that have been deceived by a criminal system which has gone against the Creator. It just doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense, and therefore I'm hopefully I'm on the right side of all of this and doing the right thing, even trying to prevent this. Now, the risk in me preventing this is that nobody will turn to the Creator. Right? Now, why is that a risk? Well, I believe it is a big risk. If we don't turn people back into having a faith in, let's say, moral conscience through the Creator given, creation giving up to us, if we don't try and get humanity to turn to that, then that means there's going to be no moral conscience protection over humanity moving forward. Okay, and we have the risk of this all happening again. And this is why it's critical that the system changes and is based on transparency, truth, integrity, equality, fairness for the entire in all of humanity, and in particular transparency through the financial system to stop the motivation for the lies and the deception, and how that links into the removal of the moral conscience through the substance abuse, drug trafficking, alcohol, drugs, sex trade, etc. So what I've got to do, or my role, I believe, is to bring about a new system to ensure that those things don't ever happen again, but also potentially bring people to whether you want to call it Christ, I don't know what I can call the Creator, but moral conscience, I suppose, is just the best way for me to put this, because that will encompass all faiths generally. There's a danger that because of what happens generally with a catastrophic event. Okay, if humanity was aware of an impending catastrophic event, generally people will turn to the Creator at that point. All right, when they know there's an impending doom situation, they will generally start praying or whatever and turning towards the Creator. I'm trying to stop an impending potentially catastrophic event on Earth, so there's a risk that people won't turn to the Creator, and that we're going to actually lead into a corrupted future for Earth anyway, and not be able to safeguard the children and humanity. That is one element of risk with what I'm doing. However, I think if I'm focusing on what I've said about the removal of the foundation of the system being based on moral conscience, I actually believe that the Creator will naturally come through that moral conscience to humanity. And I think that is what will happen, to be honest with you, which will counteract what I've just said. I think I've pretty much answered most questions. Just looking back on the latest comments now, from the bottom. Catacombs are from cataclysm, in my opinion. Someone's put, Mark. Thank you, Mark. Government means to govern your mind. Yeah, it means mind control. Actually does, translated. Govern, control, meant means mind. Paul is the establishment, in my opinion, about slaves. Obey your masters, yet Christ came to set the captive free. Follow your gut, good man. Thank you for your comment. Appreciate that, Kinhell. Gary, there is no way you are doing the wrong thing. You are a light in the darkness. Thank you, Vivian. I hope that's the case. I really hope. It feels that that's the case. No, you're not. No, you're not. God knows your heart and everything else. You have got this. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Thank you. With I am again using a name like the Lamb of God. Yeah, I've actually got there's I am connections in the research as well. One of the interesting things, I had a conversation with someone, was it yesterday or the day before, and they said, first of all, they said, Gary, what if you're trying to prevent something that's meant to happen? And I went through the reasons, some of the reasons I've just said. But they also said, what was it, the other thing? Oh, it just came into my head and it's gone out. Yeah, they said that basically Christianity means that the innocent must suffer for the sake of those that are corrupted by this. And they made a point, this is a Christian that was telling me this, and they heard a story about, or they were given the analogy as to where in a movie, for example, it doesn't make sense to them where, for example, an innocent character within the movie doesn't suffer for the sake of the rest of the people. Now, that obviously then relates to the Jesus element in all of this, or the story of Jesus, where they were sacrificed supposedly to take on the suffering of humanity through sin. Now, this person was claiming that we are sinful, we will always be sinful, there's nothing we can do about that, and that Jesus's sacrifice took away the future sin. Now, the trouble with that is what that says is we can continue to sin. Okay, we can continue to do things that we know to be wrong. That does not fit at all with me. That does not make sense. Okay, what makes sense is the rationality element in this. Okay, which is what I've been saying. Where generally, when we are all rationally thinking, we follow that narrow path of righteousness to the best of our ability, and most of us, we're never going to be perfect, but most of us stick to that in a way that will protect us from guilt ourselves and protect others from us. If we don't have that as a theory and or thesis around all of this, and we say, well, actually, we can just continue committing sin as long as we repent and as long as we believe in Christ, then we can continue committing sin. No, come on, everybody. That does not make sense. I believe this is a deception within Christianity. That does not make sense, because ultimately you will lead to the end of everything. I mean, you're not just talking about humans, you're talking about the end of all of life on earth. Now, these animals don't have the intelligence that we have, most of them. We can learn a lot from them, I tell you, we really can. They are what they are. There is no ulterior motive according to what we see and what we hear about animals, okay? Incredible, they're incredible, okay? We've been given the gift of intelligence combined with moral conscience in a rational state of mind is incredibly powerful, and then, of course, that gives us the power to look after and nurture those other billions of other life forms that are relying upon us. All right, if we don't, all right, then our whole system collapses for a start. But of course, morally, you come back to life and the value of life, and we have all been guilty sometime or another of devaluing life, whether it be, you know, we see an animal that needs help and we don't help it, or we kill animals when we don't actually need to. Now, I'm going to be very specific here, and a lot of you are going to take the mick out of me, but you can. I don't care what people think about me. Instead of killing a fly, getting a glass and putting it outside. Instead of killing a spider, getting a glass, putting it outside. You know, little things like this. That's what we've lost. We've lost a huge part of the value of life. And of course, if you've got a creator watching, okay, and they see humanity choosing to destroy their creation when there's another option, it's not going to be good, is it? It's not going to be good, is it? You know, you imagine creating something for somebody and you watch them disregarding it, and you watch them destroying it, and you watch them devaluing what you have put effort into. And this may seem very petty, but I actually think this is very important in all of this, is ensuring that we get back to that valuing creation, caring for it, nurturing creation, all of creation. And of course, what they've done with their system is deliberately separated us from creation and from nature through technology. And this, I believe, is done by design, because they are linked into satanic cults and they are so separate from the moral conscience and the creator themselves. And obviously, artificial intelligence has the risk of completely pulling us away to the point where there is no coming back from technology, and it will ultimately lead to our destruction if all of these other things don't happen that I'm talking about in the meantime with the colliders, etc. So where was I going to go with that? I think I've made my point on that. I think there was something I was going to say about that, but it's gone out of my mind. So yeah, it was just really coming back to this Christian basis of Jesus died for our future sins, and therefore we can continue to commit sin. No, come on, everybody. That's got to be a deception. It's got to be part of the double crossing, the double cross within Christianity, because it just does not make sense that it is fine for us to continue to do things that we know to be wrong against our moral conscience, which affects us, which affects everybody else, and will ultimately lead to the end of the Creator's creation. Doesn't make sense, everybody. So I had this interesting conversation with them, and I was just thinking, as he was saying, I was just thinking, this isn't right. This just, no, you've been misled. I didn't say this to him, but I was thinking it. You've been misled by this. It doesn't make sense with the whole moral conscience side of things. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Thanks very much for all your comments. Sorry I upset you, Justin. I literally hadn't seen the comment, but I think I've got what you've been saying. I've screenshotted it, and I can do a little bit of research on it as well. So just come back to the last few comments. This is what the British people do, double cross people till this day. Yeah, I actually believe the double cross sign was a huge, and the saying is a huge reference to Christianity. The two crosses, okay, the cross of the crucifix and the hooked X cross of the bloodline of Christ in existence today through the hooked X cross where Jesus and Mary Magdalene had a child. I suspect that's going to be the case, and therefore you've got the two crosses. The first one, I believe, is probably going to be a deception. That doesn't mean a lot of the other stuff around Christ isn't true, but that crucifix element of the deception, how I've just said about it to you, is, I believe, a massive part of the deception. And then how that links into the blood of the children, tying into that as an infiltration of Christianity and other faith groups to drink the blood of Christ for eternal life. It looks as though they've tried to make that literal by consuming the blood of the innocent to create almost immortality, which is an absolute mockery of Christ in itself. Because what we're then saying is, we don't believe there's anything after life. We want to live as long as we can because we don't believe that. So we're actually going to use that religion, okay, as a mockery, as part of a mockery of that. This becomes satanic in itself, as part of a deception, because we don't want to die and we're so scared of dying, because we don't really believe in anything. We're going to use that and implement that into that religion and potentially consume the blood of the innocent to extend their lives. And those of you who don't believe it's possible to extend life by changing the blood in the body continuously and changing organs, of course it's going to extend the life, all right, to a certain degree at least. Of course it is, because as you get older, you know, the blood gets affected and it affects the rest of the organs in the body, and it looks as though they've worked out, and this all ties in then to the vampirism connection. All right, there's loads of it. When I came in from the Apocalypse Apophis asteroid, there's loads of what do you call it, companies? What's the country? Romanian companies, right? Which then links back in with Vlad the Impaler connection, tying into Charles and now tying into Donald Trump, everybody, right? Because the information has come out over the last 2 weeks or so that Donald Trump is a distant cousin of King Charles, and King Charles had already admitted that he was a relative, a distant relative of Vlad the Impaler, which then links into vampirism. So, wow, it's interesting times, everyone. Justin, look at the last live you've left. Put a comment. Okay, I'll have a look. Thanks, Justin. You're right. Justin has provided very important information. Massive thank you to Justine, which I've then gone into and verified, and it has been critical. So thank you, massive thank you to Justine for the evidence that she's provided to me. Never have and never will vote. There is no voting. It's all a lie. It was all set up as a lie back from the Reformation when they started forming governments. The best chat with no morons tonight. Shouldn't have paid Justine. But living forever would be a curse to a certain degree. Of course it would. Of course it would. But how can you can't sustain humanity if everyone's living forever? First of all, you wouldn't be able to do it. There'd be too many people. All right. So there has to be death. So then you come to, how do you remove the fear of death? That becomes critical, doesn't it? It becomes critical. So as we become ill, we are accepting of that because of the strength of faith in what is to follow. That is the only way to move forward in this, is to bring back a faith in it. And I believe that comes, like I've said, through moral conscience, all right, which will then, through rationality, which leads to moral conscience. There is no other way to resolve this. Now, of course, you've got the whole issue of population concerns in relation to all of this, but population can be managed rather than controlled if it becomes an issue through incentivized choice. They haven't done that. As far as I'm aware, there's been no transparency, there's been no incentivized choice for their decision making. What you've got is a very small number of people on the scale of things, 1% potentially of the world's planet, who are literally exploiting and victimizing the rest of humanity, 99%, and that's all they're focused on is them, okay, so, which goes against moral conscience, because they wouldn't want that done to them. So we know they're not of the creator. And of course, what this then does is, where was I going with that? Something I was going to say, it's gone out of my mind. Let me read your comment. Living forever will be a curse, you put. Yeah, so what is now essential is that transparency is key, and then based on that transparency, incentivized choice. So if, for example, the population ever becomes an issue, you incentivize people not to have children, all right? You incentivize it. A lot of people will go for that, and if it's the right incentivization. And then you change that every now and then, depending on, you know, maybe you have to incentivize people to have children to a certain extent because the population is dwindling, all right? So therefore you incentivize people to have children through transparency. This is what's important. Whereas at the moment, what they've done is they've set up the ability to, well, if the population ever does become an issue, we'll just secretly wipe them all out in a way they won't even know. We'll poison them, we'll poison the water, we'll radiate them to death, reduce their numbers, we'll stop them being able to be fertile and have children, which will cause cancer, but they create cancer. I mean, it's fairly obvious now they've created cancer, all right? It's fairly obvious, everybody. And of course, this ties in with the blood of the innocent. Because as soon as they get people into the healthcare system, they take the blood. Have you noticed it? If you go into hospital, generally the first thing they do is take blood, all right? Small amount generally, but if they do that with enough people, they then stock up that blood. That blood then can be used, obviously, back into the blood network tying with the vampirism and the transfusions and everything else that's being exposed. So, you know, we have to get to a point where we don't fear death, and that we have moral conscience as a foundation to protect all of humanity, and the system reflects that through transparency and then incentivized choice. It's so easily done, okay, the transparency element with the full verification to bring liability and accountability for leaders within organizations, all right? There needs to be some sort of leadership. Some people want leaders and need leaders, okay? Some people just don't have the ability to not be able to do things without asking for help or asking for guidance, okay? So there's generally going to need to be some sort of leaders, but the system needs to protect the masses from those leaders, right? As soon as you do that, through transparency, through the financial system, with full accountability and liability, based on moral conscience, which brings back rationality, which brings back moral conscience, which brings back the creator, and fear, and a lack of fear of death. There you go. Everything will just naturally fall into place. It won't be immediate. You know, you've got a lot of addicts out there. Many people are addicted, whether it be drugs, alcohol, sex, technology. But of course, there will be so much more money that there will be able to be a suitable system of rehabilitation for those people. At the moment, there is no motive to rehabilitate people because it's a problem reaction system, criminal network, you see. They're creating the problems and they're creating the solutions, but they don't want the problems to be resolved because otherwise it stops this circle of corruption, you see, this ability to exploit everybody. So as soon as you bring in what I'm talking about, then you create genuine rehabilitation processes, which means all of these people that hate me, that are addicted to drugs and think, oh my goodness, we can't live in a world without that, they're actually going to be so much better off because once they have that clarity through the removal of those addictions, they will find that their lives are absolutely incredible. You know, this I honestly envisage a world of paradise for everybody. I absolutely see that as a possibility now. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't see that as a possibility. But you're not going to, you know, we're not going to be necessarily talking about our generation. I'm what, 48, 49 now. You know, but we've got to think of the future generations in this. We've got to think of, well, how can we safeguard them? How can we prevent this ever happening to them? And that's what we need to aim for, is the next generation to not go through this. And that is absolutely on the table now. That's absolutely on the cards as a possibility because of this evidence, because of a strategy based on that evidence. You know, you can't have a strategy that's not based on the overall problem and the real evidence supporting what that problem is. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because it creates the evidence, empowers the people, and it provides a strategy, at least on a transitional basis. But of course, that strategy may need to be changed as we evolve the solutions to all of these problems, and we have to iron out the creases, so to speak, as we move forward with that. But we are literally on the verge of, this is the most incredible time to be alive. It really, really is. We are so incredibly privileged and blessed, as worrying as it is, as anxiety inducing as it is for a lot of people. It's an incredibly important time to be alive and to live through this. It is, as I keep saying, I believe the most important time in all of humanity since the creation. I absolutely believe that's the case. We're very, very privileged. So that's a very positive way to look at this, is just keep thinking, wow, you know, I'm living through this, and wow, we are on the verge of something incredible or something the opposite. All right, now you've got to hang on to that hope and positivity of the incredible in all of this. Interesting, that's the move. No, it's called the impossible, isn't it? So yeah, anyway, I'm going to go. I've talked a lot longer than I anticipated I would. Thanks very much, really appreciate you listening. Thank you for all your comments, thanks for your information, Justine and others. I'm going to crack on, do some research and go from there. Thanks a lot, everyone. All the best. Bye bye.